Okay, raw milk. Let's talk about raw milk for a little while. I know I've been saying in a few videos leading up to this that I'll be talking about raw milk a little bit. So I thought today, why not? I've just come back from collecting my raw milk. Unfortunately, I've got to travel um, just under an hour to go and collect my raw milk. So it's a big long round trip just to get some milk. And there's probably a lot of you out there thinking, why would you even bother going that far just to collect some milk? Well, that's the closest place that I've got that will supply raw milk. Everywhere else is pasteurised. You certainly can't get raw milk in your local supermarket or shop or anything like that. So unfortunately, the laws that we've got nowadays, um, if you want to sell raw milk, you can only do it from your farm or from your farm shop. You can't deliver it to people, and you can't supply it to shops. So that's why I've got to travel so far. But again, you're still probably asking, well, why? Okay. Pasteurization for me, it doesn't make any sense for me because pasteurization basically kills off everything in the milk. Now, the idea of pasteurization in the first place, which was invented many moons ago, I think it came about. Well, let's go back of why they came up with pasteurization. It was in about 1812 to 1814, somewhere around then. I don't know. I wasn't alive. Um, that they actually started making whiskey. Whiskey became a big thing, not only in the United States but in England as well. And it was around this time that populations in cities started to grow, cities started to get bigger. And obviously, the cities started to eat into the countryside as well. And the demand for milk started to rise because of the rise in population. But they were finding there was less and less land for people to start producing the milk. But at this time, whiskey started to be made quite heavily as well. And whiskey distilleries were popping up in all cities. So the people that were making the whiskey kind of saw a niche in the market because to make the whiskey they were actually using a lot of grains and grain products. And when they actually go through the fermentation and distillation processes to make the whiskey, they were left with this disgusting, foul-smelling slop that was basically still made of grains, but they had no use for the slop that was left after making the whiskey. So they thought to themselves, what can we do with all this slop? There must be some way we can make some extra money. So what they did is because they saw that this stuff is basically grain based, they thought, well, we could use that. We could use that to feed the cows. You know, we could make some extra money here. If we had a dairy next to our distillery, we could feed the cows this slop, and not only could we produce whiskey, we could help produce milk as well. Obviously, back then, it seemed like a good idea. They didn't really appreciate what you should be feeding a cow or how you should be looking after a cow. They just thought, let's feed them this grain slop and it will help them produce milk. So that's what's happened. They literally had a dairy next to the distilleries. And once they had finished I can't even say that word, making the whiskey, I'm just going to use the word making, that's easier. After they finished making the whiskey, the slop would literally go through to the dairy and the cows would be eating this absolute shit, basically. So the cows obviously weren't very well. They're becoming sick cows. And you can imagine the milk that they were producing was absolutely foul. And it's no wonder that a lot of people start to get ill from having it. You can't get well from eating sick animals, and you can't get well from eating anything that comes from a sick animal. You're just going to get sick yourself. And that's what happened. So the scientists started to think, well, how can we get around this? Unfortunately, instead of thinking, well, how should we start looking after this cow? How should we start feeding it the way it should be fed and stop the cow from getting sick? No. Instead, they wanted to think of a way just to kill off everything that's in the milk, everything that's harmful in the milk, just to kill it off. And they came up with pasteurization. Pasteurization is a process that just heats the milk, basically. I'm sure a lot of you know what pasteurization is. I won't go into it in detail. They have different ways of doing it at different temperatures, and they keep it at different temperatures at different periods of time, literally to kill off everything that's in the milk. When they do this, it actually kills off all the goodness that's in the milk as well. So all the good bacteria that's in there, all the good bacteria that produces the lactic acid that kills off the bad bacteria, that's gone. So everything good and bad is just dead. So when you're drinking pasteurized milk, you literally are just drinking dead matter. It's just dead bacteria. Now this stimulates the immune system, and it's obviously going to cause havoc in the body from stimulating your immune system all the time. It also kills off, all the enzymes are gone. So you have a lot of people nowadays that are lactose intolerant. Lactose, I'm sure that many people know, lactose is a sugar, and there's a lot of it in milk. There's a lot of lactose sugar in milk. Now, lactose, for some people particularly, they have trouble breaking down lactose. To help the process, natural milk, raw milk, actually comes with an enzyme called lactase, which helps to break down the lactose sugar, and it can then be absorbed and metabolized by the body a lot easier. And that's how the whole process should work. Unfortunately, the pasteurization process will just kill off the lactase, and you're just left with the sugar. You're just left with the sugar water, and that's why people start getting a lot of allergic reactions, etc. And those that are lactose intolerant, when they try raw milk and they go on to raw milk, they find that they have no problems at all, and they don't get their allergic reactions because it's got the lactase in it. So basically, yeah, if you're drinking pasteurized milk, it's just dead. It's absolute dead, and it is just sugar water. People are under this. Again, we're probably going into other realms here about diet, but people that go on these fad diets tend to go on to skimmed milk as well because it's got less saturated fat in it. Saturated fat, unfortunately, we need for many processes in our body. We do need saturated fat. So people start drinking skimmed milk, thinking that it's going to be better for them. But when you cut out all the fat content and all that you're left with is sugar. That's all you're drinking is sugar. So when we have kids nowadays, they're tucking into their cereals and they're having Cocoa Pops and all these other weird types of cereals. That's just sugar. They're then pouring more sugar on top of it. And then parents wonder why their kids are just hyperactive all day and they're playing up at school and they've got behavioural problems and ADHD. Come on, we're just feeding them sugar, and it's no wonder. So raw milk, it is alive, it is natural. We have evolved on drinking raw milk since the dawn of time. We need to be looking after the cows. We need to be running the dairies in a proper fashion. We need to be feeding the cows on raw green pastures. They need to be feeding on grass. They need to be grass fed. If they're grass fed, this means that the milk is going to have naturally higher concentrations of the omega-3 fatty acids, etc. It's going to be a lot more nutrient dense than if they're fed on grains. Unfortunately, some organic milks call themselves organic, but the cows are still fed on grains and not grass like they should be. So we need to feed the cows what they need to be getting. We need to be running the dairies properly, and there is no problem with this process. Anything that's bad that is in that milk is going to be naturally killed off from the lactic producing good bacteria that is in that milk. It kills off all the bad bacteria that's in there. It's very good for the gut, very good for the system. It's very life-giving, and as you can tell, it's something that I'm passionate about. So it's just a quick video today. I think I'm running out of time now, so it's a shame that I have to end there. If anybody's got any comments about raw milk, please place it down the bottom there. Good comments are always welcome, and hopefully we'll be back soon. Please support your local organic farmer, support your local dairy if it is organic. Check out the way that they're treating their animals and make sure that it is a good farm that you're getting your raw milk from. But please support them as much as you can, they need it. Take care.